sure.
Fertilizer is made all over the world. It's just natural gas in Europe has made the production of fertilizer there very poor.
Got it.
But for sure, a big tell for us was China limiting the exports of phosphates. That is what triggered us to write Starvation Diet all the way back last October, and we.
I'm gonna have to go back and read that. And by the way, he keeps throwing out his newsletter. I subscribe to it, and you guys should too. We'll have the link in the description below. But Go ahead, keep going.
Yes, Doomberg.substack.com. You just give my commercial. So one of the interesting things, and to tie two of the things you want to talk together, phosphates are used in batteries, and China is making a big push to be the dominant player in the production of electric vehicles. And that very same phosphate that is going into those lithium-ion batteries is being diverted away from the farm field. And so these are all choices and trade-offs that we have to make. There is not an infinite amount. And phosphate is mined. And phosphate is mined powered by vehicles using diesel. And we're in a diesel shortage.
Imagine that.
And so, everywhere you look, it's the same challenge, right? And literally ammonia, which is probably the most important of the three. I mean, you can't make it without natural gas today. The Haber process is hugely energy intense. The number one input into the production of fertilizer is natural gas. So when the price of fertilizer reached 15 times what it was in the US, in Europe, back in February, you could see very well that the next thing that would happen is a fertilizer crisis, and that the chemical industry would collapse. These are delicate supply chains that have been built around cheap, abundant energy. You take away the cheap and the abundant, and you don't have your supply chains. It's just not. It's a very simple dot connecting, and so it's a real issue. I think we need another harvest to see the results. And it's not just fertilizer; it's herbicides and fungicides, and the diesel that powers the tractors, and the labor that does the harvesting. All of those things are in short supply. We wrote a piece called "Farmers on the Brink" that sort of captured all of this several months ago. But the earliest where we really put our, the Doomberg flag into the ground on upcoming famine was Starvation Diet. And I believe we wrote that on October 10th of last year, or maybe October 22nd, one of those days. And I would encourage people listening to read it. It's a very short piece, very blunt piece. We laid much of the blame at the feet of, I believe, Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, who has been directing the defund the fossil fuel movement from the financial side, and is, of the people in the world, probably personally more responsible for a lot of this than anybody else.
And I'm just going to throw out, by the way, he's doing all of that with your money, not his money. So he's managing people's retirement accounts and pension funds, and he's using the power of your money to influence the world in a way you're probably not okay with. So maybe take a look at that. But
the guys that got a degree in real estate. I mean, nothing against degrees in real estate, but I don't think it qualifies you to dictate the global energy policy.
Yeah. But anyway, so tell us about the famine, the Starvation Diet, and the upcoming famine. I mean, what are we looking at?
So what we're looking at is, in the U.S., we will pay the clearing price. In the wealthy nations, the clearing price will be set. We won't do without, and we will make sure that the lowest members of our economic ladder get stimulus checks like we're seeing, and that's only going to serve to export inflation to countries that can least afford it. So we're seeing the beginnings of social unrest, political upheaval, revolutions in the emerging economies that are already on the brink.
Sri Lanka,
Ecuador,
yeah.
Peru. We're going to see some African countries topple here pretty soon. We like to say that on the path from abundance to starvation is riot. People tend not to starve quietly, and so they will take action. They will blame their political leaders. They will raise up. They will take arms, and we're seeing that, and we'll see more of it. It's difficult to predict exactly where. This is highly chaotic, non-linear type systems analysis, but at the highest level, it's inevitable. And the reason that is because we only have so many calories to go around. And the price elasticity of demand for life is high, and those who can afford it are in the developed world, and they will pay it. Push comes to shove. It's annoying for you and I to fill up our vehicles at these prices. It's not as existential for us to fill up our vehicles at these prices. It's annoying that the cost of food at the grocery store has gone up to me, but my children are still going to eat, knock on wood, by and large, absent a major crisis from here. And in such a major crisis, the economies we're describing will have long since fallen over the cliff. And so the US is relatively energy balanced. We have been blessed with the breadbasket of the world. All of the advantages that Zion would say make us a superpower are true. We'll be okay. But the more we have to pay to ensure that, especially in election season, the more expensive it's going to be for those right on the brink and can no longer afford it. And there's some dangers that this might not all work out. It might not be just that we'll pay a lot, other people will suffer, and we'll just move on. We've outsourced an enormous amount of our mining and our manufacturing to the very same countries that will struggle in this environment. And you can't take a brick from the bottom to put it on top indefinitely without the whole structure collapsing. And so that's something to keep an eye on.
So poorer countries are not looking so good. Unfortunately, there's going to be some starvation, potentially riots, and political upheaval. If there's a magic wand and we could magically reverse this, it doesn't fix it, right? Because it's going to take a year and a half, 2 years to kind of work its way back through.
I would say that a change in mindset would go a long way. Price elasticity demand works both ways.
But I mean, this fall's harvest is already done, and now we have to wait till next spring plant and then another fall harvest. So we're like a year and a half away.
But there's some mindset things we could do.
Okay.
I'll give you a small example. In the developed world, almost all the wasted food happens on the plate. In the developing world, almost all the wasted food happens in the supply chain. They have unsophisticated cold chains and storage. But by the time that food gets to the plate, you're not wasting a bite.
Right.
When was the last time you saw somebody at a restaurant really clean a plate?
Yeah, we don't.
We waste an enormous amount of food in this country. And
my mom used to tell me when I didn't want to eat my food, someone in Africa starving would want that.
That's the sort of classic thing we all heard as children.
Yeah.
And look, it's true. Like the amount of energy, like imagine, and look, I'm the worst. I have a poor appetite, and the serving sizes at restaurants are too big for me. Like if I eat half of that plate, I've destroyed half of the total integral of energy that went into producing it. It's just wasted, goes in the garbage. Whereas if you're in a poor country, the privilege of eating a peanut butter sandwich in a bag of chips, you're not wasting a gram of that.
Right.
And so, for example, we could have an honest conversation with ourselves in this country and say, hey, maybe we ought to have a clean plate campaign. Let's not just assume we are allowed access and this access is our natural born right. Let's show the rest of the world who's struggling a little respect by preserving food, eating our leftovers, not wasting anything. Let's open up the spigots on natural gas production, on oil production. Let's reinvigorate our nuclear power industry. Let's get over some of the silly policies that are, we're not serious yet. Right now, it's still political. We're still managing to the optics.
Yeah.
And so we have a long way to go. And unfortunately, that means we're going to export a lot of pain.
Yeah.